but I heard you reference Bitcoin as it is a technically thermodynamically superior as an asset. It's a technically thermodynamically superior asset. And so I was wondering if you could maybe expand on like what you mean by that. Because to someone that hasn't heard about Bitcoin and is just learning, they would just hear that and be like, what does he mean?
I mean, the basic principle of thermodynamics is a closed system or an adiabatic system is closed to matter coming or leaving. And if I have a closed system or an adiabatic system, I can solve for the problem. And if I don't have a closed system, if I keep introducing mass in the system, I can't solve the problem. So, you know, an example of a thermodynamically sound swimming pool would be one without a leak. And if you have a leak and you wait a day and you jump into a swimming pool, you're going to break your neck. And an example of a sound fuselage in an airplane is one without a leak. And if you have a leak, when you get to altitude, the air gets sucked out and everybody suffocates and the plane crashes, right? And in a monetary system, if you have a monetary system, you need two things. You need a monetary asset, which is fixed, closed asset if it's going to be mathematically proper. And then you need a monetary network to move the asset around, to change the ownership of the asset. So if I created a compressed air system, right, a good one would be the balloon without the leak.
Yeah.
And the bad one would be the balloon with the leak.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at all the other monetary systems, so we try gold. The problem with gold is it's got a 2.5% leak per year in it, which means it's got a half-life of 30 years, which means the energy is bleeding out of the system constantly. And there's a big difference between a half-life of 30 years and a half-life of infinity. Like in one case, you live forever, right? 1,000,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I shine a flashlight in outer space or a laser beam and it goes forever. And the other case, it goes for 30 feet. So not only is it a superior idea to have an asset which is capped at 21 million, it makes it mathematically proper, right? The 21 is equal to 21 and it'll be equal to 21. And that makes it adiabatic and solvable in a closed system, right? I mean, the fundamental principle, right, in aeronautics is, every single thing starts with, well, assume an adiabatic system and then ... you can do something. And, what if we assume not an adiabatic system? Well, that's a beautiful airplane and wind shear smashes it to a pulp in 1 second because wind shear, because of one, and what's the equivalent of wind shear? It's like a politician printed 10x more money. Like wind shear in Zimbabwe or in Venezuela, you just saw it. Right now, why is Bitcoin special? Because it's the first effective worldwide asset network. You can build a crypto asset network that is not thermodynamically sound. If Dogecoin has 100 billion Doge, right? Like, and you keep adding it. So if I keep adding more tokens, that's not sound. The protocol could be wrong. And on the other hand, in the absence of Bitcoin, people chase to another asset network. So we just saw, a massive $10 billion wipeout last week with Archegos because you had someone shorting Viacom stock, but Viacom stock is not a closed system. It works fine unless the CEO of Viacom wakes up and says, my stock is overvalued. I have a fiduciary obligation to sell stock. And so Bill Wong had, 50 billion in leverage on an assumption that the share count of Viacom wasn't going to change. When the CEO of Viacom decided to issue $3 billion worth of stock, he diluted it. That was the pin in the balloon. Everything collapsed. The entire capital structure of the leverage trade collapsed and $10 billion, $20 billion got wiped out. Why? Because stocks aren't closed systems, nor is debt, right? If you buy up all the debt of New York City and you drive the price to infinity and you tell all your friends on Reddit to buy all the New York City debt, the mayor of New York might just go ahead and issue another $20 billion worth of debt. Just like people say, oh, GameStop, they should issue stock. Well, This is a news flash. Don't short a system which isn't the closed system.
Yeah.
Right. And that means the problem is real estate. You can, if you're buying apartments in Manhattan, they can build another building next to you and put more apartments on the market. You know, with debt, the government can, if you buy up all the government debt, they can issue more debt. And that doesn't work for you. And if you buy equity, they can issue more equity. If you buy gold, when the price goes up, they will mine more gold. And so we've got $500 trillion worth of assets that are being used as a store of value. They're all defective, Daniel. And they're all thermodynamically defective. But if you don't like the word thermodynamics, because that seems like a big word and adiabatic is just for aeronautical engineers, I have another, we can just go back and say, we can use Newtonian mathematics and say, because arithmetic, right? Because you could also look at Principia Mathematica and say, well, I'm just going to design an asset based on the principles of mathematics. Mm-hmm. Well, how does that work? Well, I issue 21 million units in my bank, and we just agree that for all of eternity, they're not going to be more than 21 million units. And so if you and all of your friends decide to buy up all the units, and if you all agree that you're not going to sell the units, then you have a hard point to stand on, and you don't have to worry about the CEO of Bitcoin issuing another 21 million units and diluting you out with a rug pull. I think I'll end this little soliloquy with Archimedes. Archimedes said, you know, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum upon which to place it, and I can move the world. You know, and all the non-engineers and non-physicists, they think that quote would sound a lot better if we shortened it to, give me a lever long enough and I can move the world. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't work unless you have the fulcrum. The fulcrum is the point at which I can put 1 million pounds of force, and the fulcrum has to be able to support 1 million pounds of force to move something on the other end that weighs 1 million pounds.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And once you understand that idea, I need a fulcrum. What does that mean? I need something that's not going to move in the universe. What's the most stable thing in the economic universe today? And the answer is Bitcoin. If I have $1 trillion monetary network, it's like a gyroscope spinning so fast. Right? Intuitively, you know, $1 trillion of energy is more than $1 million of energy or $1 of energy. I can muscle around $1 or $1 million or $1 billion or 10 billion. It's hard to muscle $1 trillion. Now, can I actually put $100 trillion of leverage on $1 trillion network? Probably not. Like, I would not advise that you go and borrow $100 trillion and buy Bitcoin to drive the price up, to, you know, pull yourself by your bootstraps. You can't do that. But can you borrow $1 billion of leverage and buy Bitcoin? Yeah, I did that. You can do that. And as the liquidity of Bitcoin grows, as it goes from a billion a day to 2 billion a day to 4 billion a day to 8 billion a day to $16 billion a day to 32 billion a day, you'll be able to get more leverage on that fulcrum, and you can literally move the world.